Welcome to Smashed Avo Property. Today I'm speaking with Jesse Pryor. He's an 18-year-old with plenty of ambition to get into the property ladder. Today is going to be a little bit of a different podcast as we take a step back and put ourselves in the shoes of a young go-getter who has his whole investing journey ahead of him. I'm hoping for the other young listeners that may hear stories on this podcast and feel like that investment ship has already set sail, realise that there's plenty of time and many other people in the same boat as them. I also want to understand the sentiment around what it looks like to get into the property market from a younger generation.
I think it's sort of the greater scheme of things. You need to think about what you will need in the future rather than what you need now. You need to be more proactive.
As always, seek your own professional financial, legal, taxation, and property investing advice for your current situation. Everything we talk about is just our opinion and general in nature and should never be considered as personal advice. This episode is brought to you by pricefinder.com.au, one of the most comprehensive property data providers in Australia. As part of the Domain Group, Pricefinder collects detailed property data from multiple sources so you don't have to, including property ownership, phone numbers, property zoning, over 30 years of sales and rental history, and real-time listing and auction results. You can also purchase the title certificates on their platform if you need to. Pricefinder has a feature called Property Scout. It's designed especially for investors to find development opportunities by searching properties by zoning and land size. Pricefinder also has a great interactive mapping tool that makes your search easier and faster. So without any further ado, let's get house hunting with Jesse. Jesse Pryor, welcome to Smashed Avo Property.
It's great to be here.
Nah, it's good to get you on, mate. It's going to be a little bit of a different podcast today. So Jesse is actually my wife's younger cousin. I've been fortunate enough to sort of see him grow up and become the man that he is today. And he's a young gun ready to get into his life, his adult working career, his journey, his investing path. And I sort of wanted to take a look from the outside in today. Like I remember being in his shoes and looking at the property market and sort of thinking, it's going to be impossible to get in. How are these people buying properties? And for a lot of my listeners, I know they're in that sort of younger category and they're sort of listening to the people on here that have got, 20 property portfolios at 25 and they just think, I'll never be able to do the same sort of thing. And so I just want to take a step back and go back into a younger person's shoes and see what their spotlight is on the property market, how they see it, what they think, especially in, the current situation that we're going through with COVID-19 and all that sort of stuff. And then the other thing that I wanted to get out of this is I know that we've got a lot of buyers agents that sort of listen to this, and I want to bring them out of the buyers agent shoes and into potential future clients or the other younger generation as well, just to sort of understand what their train of thinking is. And I know they're dealing with these types of people all the time and having all these sort of conversations. But why don't you just give us a little bit of a in-depth background of you, Jesse? How old you are, what you're studying, what you're up to, all that sort of stuff.
Yep. So I'm 18 years old. Just finished VC last year. Currently studying at uni full-time law and international relations, and working part-time at a supermarket, which sort of was inspired of the current sort of situation. I was doing other stuff before then, sort of admin work for a family business and working at a restaurant. And so it's sort of been moved around, but it's just part-time working and studying full-time.
Nice. And how has the current environment impacted like your uni? Is it changed a little bit? Like, are you doing classroom still or are you doing online?
Yeah, I think they're sort of trying to act like everything's okay, but it's completely different. Everything's online. It's obviously Zoom classes now. So it's all the same workload pretty much, except they expect you to do it all from home. And, if you think that uni is already self-motivating as it is and you already have to be, very consistent with studying, that's exemplified now because it's crazy. It's all online and you really have to sit down and motivate like, okay, I need to study, but in comparison to when you could go to university and you could ask your tutors and your teachers and lecturers questions, and you could study at uni and you'd sort of go there and you'd hear about assignment and be like, okay, I need to go home and work on this. It's a lot harder now, obviously, but you've got to make do with what you can, I guess.
And that whole sort of uni vibe as well is kind of just like, you're going with your mates. It's not easy, but it's kind of got a perception of, you're young, you have a bit of fun,
exactly,
like learning as well. But
go eat something as well.
Yeah,
it's
a big morale going to uni with your mates every day too. But why are you studying what you're studying? What do you want to pursue in a career?
Well, I think year 12 sort of helped me figure out what I wanted to do. I wasn't sure. I had heaps of different ideas from whatever science stuff. I was looking at Year 11. Obviously, VC subjects give you insight of what sort of careers are like with what you choose, business-related subjects. And I was just doing legal studies in VCE, and it sort of came second nature to me. Like, for someone that wasn't very academic in year 10 and in year 11, I sort of realized like this is something that I'm sort of good at, and it was something that I found easy to study. So if you're passionate for it, you should sort of pursue it. And also, which sort of came from family history in that sort of field. So I've got my granddad who was a successful solicitor in New South Wales, so that sort of was already in my head, and it just came out and manifested, and I think that's what led me here today, really.
Yeah, you're on a great trajectory, mate. You're doing a double degree, which is pretty phenomenal
it
as
is
well.
Full on, especially online, not double degree.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I definitely think you're in good stead, and I think leading into the next conversation, you and I have had a couple of back and forths about property and investing and all that sort of stuff through growing up. But what really inspired you to get into the sort of property as an investment class?
What inspired me? Look, I think I've already sort of looked at a bit in stocks, because that's obviously a very popular investment class as well. But I think the tangibility of having and owning a house is pretty good accomplishment, rather than buying stock online. I think having that tangible sort of feeling, like, it shows that you've really accomplished goals, and not only, of course, we were just talking about before, how you can reap the benefits of it. So if you've got investments in various properties, you can sort of be living in some when you need to be, and whatever. Use your houses for other people's good, help family out. Yeah, it's obviously very useful. Not only does it help make you money, but it's essential to living. You need a housing no matter where it is or how many you have. So not only that, but obviously I know that property is one of the best investments you can have, really. It's relatively low risk, or lower risk than sort of stuff like crypto and shares. You get capital growth off it. There's less volatility, and you can obviously gain income off it, which I'm sure a lot of people are doing with Airbnb and having tenants in there. So there's so many benefits off it, and it's just common sense that you want to work towards doing that. I think it's common sense for anyone. They should work towards buying houses. It's a good part of life, and it's how you become financially stable, not have to worry about that sort of, worry about much in finance.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, because I think, a lot for my... are we the same generation? I don't know.
I think you might be older, the next one up.
I don't know. Don't put me in that category. But I think from like my generation growing up specifically, like, we were always... you had to get into property, you had to own your own piece of land, you had to, play backyard cricket with your mates, and sort of, that was a really distilled fundamental in us from the generation before us. And I think listening to you then just talk about, it being a low risk property, and it's interesting, to just see that perspective again from your point of view. Is that how you sort of feel like?
Yeah, I think, it's sort of a major accomplishment that I think everyone should work towards. So it's just something that people do that are sort of educated in that way. And I think it's part of life, buying your first house, and if not more, is probably the first main objective.
Yeah. And so obviously you haven't purchased your first property yet, but you're planning to. And,
yes, of course.
And how are you planning to save for your first deposit, and where do you think you've sort of got those money principles and fundamentals from?
Yeah, look, I probably can't really give it to any sort of specific book or economist or whatever. I think it's mainly just common sense principles that I apply. I get my paychecks from whatever income I have, and then use the small amount for whatever bills I might have. Obviously, being pretty young, I'm pretty lucky at the moment to not have much to worry about in terms of those sort of expenses. But whatever sort of upfront expenses I need, that a necessity, comes probably straight out of my paycheck. And then I have a conservative amount that I might need for spending daily expenses in the week or fortnight. So I take a realistic amount for that, and a majority of the rest would go to a high interest savings account, which would be separate from the bank account I get paid in. So it's sort of like that movement of money across makes me feel like I'm really putting it away separately. It's actually really helps, especially psychologically.
Yeah. Do you have access to that account?
I do have access to it, because I sometimes, I need to be able to manage it and make sure my interest is good and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, and I want to check the balance regularly and whatnot. So I also do have a scholarship, and I make sure that the scholarship payments go directly into there. So I do need access to it in some ways.
Okay.
So I'm lucky to have that as well.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Like, I know, where did you kind of get that from? Because I know for like a lot of people your age that I've met don't have those fundamentals. They kind of just get their paycheck, they spend it, and wait for the next one to come in.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think it's sort of the greater scheme of things. You need to think about what you will need in the future rather than what you need now. You know, you need to be more proactive. I can't really give credit to anyone in particular. But I think it's just me having that proactiveness of thinking of the future and not just worrying about what I want now and what I want in the future, I think is the main thing.
Have you set yourself any sort of like defined goal of how much you want to have in savings for a deposit, or are you just sort of saving as much as you can until you reach that point?
I think saving as much as I can. Obviously, I haven't really looked in specifics yet of how much I need for a house deposit. Obviously, it would depend on what area, what house, what stage of my life I'm in, you know, if I might be getting any help or support. You know, that's a bunch of factors that need to come in. So I'm sort of just saving as much as I can for whatever sort of future investments or maybe even expenses I might have if something comes up. So I'll have it there and I can't be out of pocket if something comes up.
Yeah.
For an example, like a car accident or something like that. So you need that money in there for a rainy day in case and for your future investments just in case.
Yeah. And I'm just curious from, you know, the perspective of someone who's at uni and working part-time and, you know, has a decent amount of saving but still saving. Do you feel like you can't get into the property market while you're still in uni?
Yeah, like that's the thing. I think that's one of the things that sort of restrict me. Like I know a few people, have a few friends, even particularly recently, who have gone down a different path. So sort of down the TAFE trade school sort of path and gone straight into it, even from say year 10 or 11, rather than doing VC. They found that they were better off doing a apprenticeship in some sort of field they liked that might be influenced by their family business or whatever. So I know one or two people that have done that sort of pathway, which is probably good early on for a good amount of savings that you can get from that.
Yeah.
And now they're already buying their first property. So they're the same age as me, and I'm full-time studying, but they're full-time working as a plumber or whatever. And they're looking at their first property like, damn, like, you know, I sort of want to be in that situation. But yeah, I kind of feel as if it's like, as a student, like I was speaking to you recently as well, obviously lenders need to have confidence that you'll be able to give that repayments, particularly after the Royal Commission. So as a full-time student, I don't really see how anyone could sort of get a substantial loan yet.
Yeah.
But that's why I think it is limiting. But unless you have a serious side hustle or a seriously, good setup with a part-time job, then it's pretty difficult at this stage. But regardless if it's difficult at this stage, you just got to look towards the future and plan for the future, I guess, is the next option. So.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting way to think about it, because a lot of feedback that I get from the podcast is like everyone's so surprised on how early some of the younger investors started. Like, you know, I've got heaps of people on that have, you know, gone into the mining industry when they were 16 and earning 100K a year, and all they did was save that money, and now they've, you know, 10 years later, they're 26, but they've got a massive portfolio. And I think a lot of feedback that I get from people is like, well, maybe I should have just done a trade or, you know, gone into an industry where I get paid younger. But I think it really comes down to, you know, what are your life goals? What do you want out of life? You know, if you want to be a lawyer and that's the career and that's what you want to do every day, then you're not doing the wrong thing. It's not like you're falling behind. It's you're still going to get there. It's just going to take a little bit longer, but you'll be able to do what you want to do with your life every single day after that as well. So,
you shouldn't be forced onto a trade just to buy your first house. No matter what your situation is, you can always work out in the end the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And particularly in a career that's like the professional careers, accounting and whatnot, you probably use that to your advantage in the future as well. Whereas people that are mining wouldn't have that sort of knowledge. So people that do accounting and then studying law, they would have that sort of background, and that would help them and benefit them in the future.
Yeah, I think you'll, like obviously you're on a solid path, but that path will deviate down the line too. Like once you finish uni, you might go, I want to do this type of work instead of that type of work, and it'll still be in, you know, the areas that you studied, or you might even go, I want to do something completely different. Like it's common for people. I've had a lot of people do that too, but it's good. I think you're still on, and a lot of people, you know, say they wish they started earlier or they regret. And I think it's just because they don't, you know, if they take themselves back to your shoes as an 18-year-old figuring out this sort of adult career, what you want to do, all that sort of stuff, it's completely different. Like you still got so much ahead of you and so much time ahead of you. And I know a lot of people are Gary Vee fans, but he even says, who cares if you're 40, you still got another 40 years left. You know what I mean? And it's good to just take that perspective. So going back to sort of those money principles, was money talked about in the household when you were growing up, or is it sort of something outside of the household that you've acquired?
Yeah, look, I think from memory, money was talked about a lot in the house, a fair bit from memory, obviously, as a child. But with my dad owning a business in the solar industry, it was obviously a lot of business talk I heard because my mum was sort of supporting that business as well and working into it. So, yeah, it was pretty prevalent. I think that sort of business talk, though, sort of helped shape my interest in business today. I always was interested in it, So I think that's sort of attributable to that. But it was talked about a fair bit from memory.
Yeah, I think that's one of my biggest memories too is just having that constant money talk and discussions and how to bucket things correctly and put things away, and that trick with the hiding the old savings account so you never dip into it sort of thing. I think that's a key one. If anyone in that sort of younger age group is trying to distill some fundamentals, if that's your biggest takeaway, that's definitely been one that's helped me along the journey and a lot of other people that we've had on the podcast. But I noticed, and we've had some discussions about sort of the share market and what you're doing over in that space. I know you just touched on it before, but, would you consider yourself as a diversified investor? Will you be doing shares moving forward, or are you planning to go all into property when you can, or what's the sort of thought process there?
Yeah, I think I have a few friends that sort of look into the share market, so it sort of helped me, influence me in that way. I think that the share market is particularly the current situation, was a good opportunity, particularly for young investors with sort of pretty much a recession that we saw, huge falls in the stock market. As a young person, it's really important for us to use the stock market as that opportunity. It's a lot more accessible than something like the property market. So, yeah, that's why I think that it's important for us to go into that. But going ahead, I think moving on to the property field is a lot more important than the stock market, at least for myself. I think it's just more accessible for young people because they can sort of hold on to that sort of stock for that many years as a young age that they thought had great potential. So, yeah, for now, stocks is my main focus, but moving forward, definitely a shift to the property market.
Yeah, it's definitely a liquid asset. Like, you can buy and sell stocks pretty easily. There's, obviously got the brokerage fee and whatever, but in terms of, getting in and out if you need to, and especially in a market like this, and it's pretty interesting that you decided to get in the lower end of the market. I mean, there's the old Warren Buffett quote, be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. And like, that took me so long to figure out, but for an 18-year-old, that's pretty impressive to have the guts to throw some coin into the share market and sort of see some returns. So that's pretty good, mate. Has it been good so far? Are you still enjoying it? What sort of ratio of your savings are you putting in there? Are you going all in, or are you just sort of dabbling?
Not too bad. I just started small. I think from my savings, probably just about 10% to start.
Nice.
Just to see what it's like, play around with it, maybe moving up to 15 or 20 at tops. But
yeah,
I don't want to be too reliant on the share market. Obviously, there's always a large amount of risks that are involved with it. So, yeah, moving forward, I'll be more careful, particularly now that I've used those opportunities and invested. So I only really put more money in if I think it's a great opportunity. But I don't want to be someone that invests 80% of their savings into the share market and then loses half of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you always should be careful with that.
I think that's super impressive, mate, especially for someone your age. I remember being 16 and getting into the share market and getting addicted. Like I was daily trading. Like I just couldn't sleep at night. I was just always anxious. I was always worried about the market moving up and down. And
don't want to make it your life too much.
And I could have so easily gone down the hole of like chucking it all in. But, I think that's a really good way to think about it. Is just chuck 10% in, have a go.
Yeah.
If you lose it all, you lose it all. You got to be comfortable with that.
And then you learn off that experience.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter if you lost it, you still gain experience from it.
Yeah, exactly. But I think you've got some really good fundamentals there. So well done, mate. So yeah, being a young guy coming into the adult workforce, I mean, how are your feelings on the recent events? I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk in the media about, this being a pretty significant event and, a 1 in 100 year event, and, the older generation have never really experienced anything like it. And I think it's pretty cool that you, as a young guy, have been able to experience something coming into this workforce. Like I think, people that are sort of 8 to 12 won't really get to see the full front of this, but I think you coming in as your first couple of years into the workforce has really shown you like what can potentially happen and what can potentially go down. And we're sort of seeing some green shoots now, like restrictions are being released and the economy is going to get picked up again. But sort of what's your take on what's happening at the moment, and how do you think it will impact your future career decisions?
Yeah, look, I think we're pretty smart as a human race. I think a pandemic can't affect us too much. We've always sort of come back from life's challenges, or the world's challenges, I should say. I think there is sort of industries that will see the effects of this in the future, not sort of industries that I would sort of be thinking to associate with as a career decision, but like I've heard some interesting perspectives. And for example, like an industry such as tourism or travel, they sort of rely on high volume capacity traveling, a bunch of people, hundreds of people in an economy, across the world, whatever.
Yeah.
But something like this business model, it could be affected. It is affected now because I've seen on the news they aren't using some middle seats in planes, and it could be affected into the future. We never know how this will affect us in the future. No one has a crystal ball, but something like that obviously doesn't seem as realistic now that everyone has that sort of growing fear of a pandemic that has shaken all of us. So I think some businesses it's also affected also the professional sort of businesses. Like you've seen some businesses realize that working from home is still somewhat productive. Like they've realized that what's the point of office spaces? So I saw a business like Twitter said to all their employees that if they want to stay home, then they can permanently. So that will also affect other businesses like bars and pubs after work. So I think in professional careers, a lot of people might be working from home in the future. Like if they can remain productive with it and they have the setup for it, then they might see that it's preferable. So it'll affect that. But in terms of my future career decisions, I don't see how it will be affected as much. I think that particularly, like I said, professional industries like lawyers, I think it'll all be the same. We'll all sort of recover in those sort of growing threats of the pandemic. So other than working from home particularly could be a main option for some of us, then I think it should be pretty unaffected for that sort of industry, but for others may not be the same.
Yeah, 100%. It's pretty interesting because, a lot of people have distilled in the fundamentals of being, within that close proximity to the CBD or working areas because it's drives employment and all that sort of stuff. And then you've got people on the other side of the fence who are saying, well, there's no correlation between property prices and employment or population growth. And so, it's pretty interesting to see how that will in fact and impact the market moving forward in the housing sector. But I don't know. I think people are still our CBDs are quite close to our bays and beaches and all that sort of stuff too. So I think generally that sort of area, and for people who want to do big events and sports and theatre and all that sort of stuff, they're generally in the bigger CBD hubs as well. So I think those fundamentals are still there for various different reasons, whether it not be because they got to go into an office or whatever it might be. But be interesting to see how that impacts moving forward. And speaking of, the housing market moving forward, I mean, some of the big banks have just come out and some of the economists have just come out saying that they can see, 5, 10, 30% declines in the property market. Do you reckon that's tarnished your views in investing in property? I
don't think so as much. I think, now what we're experiencing, hopefully, is only sort of 1 year, max year and a half, 2 year event. Someone that human lives for 80 years, I think it's going to be something that's quite minuscule in the grand scheme of things, The effects now of the property market, I think, I don't think that it will last too long into the future. At least I hope not. I think that property investments always pretty prevalent. People always moving, always wanting houses, growing families, populating areas, particularly in a place like Australia or Melbourne as a city, which is obviously very infamously always said to be one of the highest livable cities. So I think it doesn't really tarnish any of my views. I still have many years ahead and many investing years ahead, and I don't think that this sort of information now will worry me too much.
Yeah.
At least hopefully not.
Yeah, it's pretty cool for you because like I know my parents' generation have had, 30 years of really strong economic growth. Like they've only ever seen property prices increase, and I think that environment has been distilled in them, and that's sort of like how they perceive the economy and the markets and all that sort of stuff. And so growing up, that's what I was always taught. I was always taught that property doubles every 7 to 10 years. You can't miss out. Safe as houses, all that sort of stuff. And you can lose on different asset classes. You can lose on different types of property. You're investing in, a piece of land, and some pieces of land are different than others. If you're investing in apartments, you're investing in a one of 200 in an apartment block. Like there's different things and different ways of looking at things, and property prices do decrease. So I think it's really cool for you to sort of get this coming into that sort of investing life and realizing that, not every asset class is the same, and certain things can decrease in value over time. And it's something that I'm learning now. Like I always knew it was possible. I just didn't realize how dramatically fast sentiment could change, and dramatically fast markets could change. And especially going through the APRA thing in 2017 to 2019, that was a big learning curve as well. And I think it's been pretty good to witness something like that. Obviously, we haven't, we're not going through a massive recession right now. Some people would say otherwise, but given some of the data that's coming out, we're only seeing unemployment around 10 to 12%.
JobKeeper as well, sort of counteracting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if mortgage repayment holidays and stuff came off, and JobKeeper came off, and unemployment kept going up, then that's probably when we'd go into something a bit harder. But I think we've had a good taste of it anyway, and sort of can see where it would go if things were really, really bad. And so talking back onto your sort of investment goals and what you want out of life, have you got anything written down or planned out? Is there anything that you want to achieve in terms of investments?
Not so much. I think in terms of timeline, I'll be looking at it sort of when I can secure a good position, part-time position, so like an assistant role in a law firm where it is secure paycheck, and that can sort of give banks that sort of confidence with loaning. I don't have any particular goals with it. I think it happens as it comes. So when I buy the first one, you sort of reassess, look at the future, what kind of situation I'm in at that time in terms of income and savings. So I don't have a set down number for how many houses I want to buy, but whatever's necessary at the time, I'll reevaluate and move on from that.
I think you got plenty of time to figure that out too. You know exactly. What I mean, and increase your education in that space, and really do some thorough research and know what you want and how you get there. And along the way, as you said before, you're kind of just saving as much as you can. So it's not like you're missing out. But when you do get to that point when you've got a couple of tens of thousands in there and you're in that position to go again, that's when you can sort of reassess and sort of get ready to go. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what motivates you to do all this? What motivates you to go to uni? What motivates you to pursue a good career and get into investing and all that sort of stuff? Have you got like a favorite quote or anything like that?
Not so much a quote. I think just the idea of financial freedom's the main motivating aspect of it. Along with that sort of values, family, that sort of motivates me as well. Looking to the future and making sure that I can enjoy freedom and not have to worry about expenses and bills. How I'm going to pay for the next bill. Getting my children to sort of enjoy and live off the freedom that I've worked for. So not so much quotes, but sort of the future and where it can take you.
That's really cool, especially for an 18-year-old. A lot of 18-year-olds are out there partying every weekend and spending all their money, and I think it's really cool that you've got that look ahead, and not that you're not doing that sort of stuff. You probably are having a couple of fun days, but it's still good that you're looking ahead and you're thinking about it now rather than getting to 30, 35 and then go, okay, maybe I should settle down now. So no, it's good, mate. And have you got any final words for the younger generation?
Probably main thing is obviously don't spend your whole paycheck when it comes. I think getting a budget is one of the best things you can do as a younger person, sort of seeing how much you need to spend, not want to spend in a week or fortnight, sort of. And sort of make sure that all your purchases are justifiable. Of course, you don't want to be spending random money that you don't need or don't have. Of course, save as much as you can. You'll need it in the future. Your future self will thank you for it. Just save. Check your interest rates. People don't even notice their interest rates. Obviously, right now in the current climate, it's not as important because all of them are pretty much rock bottom. But for an example, I've got a bank with Queensland. There's a young. I don't know the exact name of it, but it's a younger savings account. They're offering like 3%.
Oh, wow.
Which is incredible for at this point in time in terms of all the banks. 3% is amazing. So I've got that set up. That's only up to balances of 10,000. So that's for younger people. But then moving onwards, 10,000 is pretty much whatever, 2%. Yeah. So even 2% is great at the moment. So check your interest rate and compare it with other banks. It's also something that you'll thank yourself in the future. It all adds up. It all helps. And also, if you're sort of interested in that sort of way, check out the stock market. If there's any businesses that you're sort of, I think familiarity is important in the stock market. Businesses that not you just think are good. If there's businesses that you sort of interact with and you think, well, they've got a really good business model, like they're probably making a lot of money off this, and you sort of do a little bit of research on it, then it can't hurt to even put 5% of your savings into it or whatever. Just to, it's a couple $100, can't hurt to see what it's like. So if you're looking in that way, it's interesting. But if you don't, that's fine. Savings, one of the best things you'll do now, and that obviously you'll thank yourself for the rest of your life. So saving from a young age.
Obviously, no financial advice there, guys. Just a young man just having a crack
words of wisdom
and seeing what's going out. So, no, I love it, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I want to thank you for coming on again, eh?
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. What an insightful conversation. It really took me back to looking at the property market in different eyes. My biggest takeaway was when Jesse was saying that the recent events haven't really deterred his opinion on the property market, as he realised that it's still a long-term play. I'm always looking for more guests to come onto the show. If you're under 30 and have one or more investment properties, whether it's good, bad or ugly, I would love to talk to you about it. Even if you're interested into getting into the property sector, let's have a chat. The main focus is to help other soon-to-be young investors with tips and tricks along the journey, learn from the mistakes that we have made, and ignite the fire to set themselves up financially for the rest of their lives. If you're interested in sharing your story, you can go to jordandeong.com/podcast, where there's a podcast inquiry button at the top that will guide you through the next steps. If you want to see what else I'm up to, you can go to YouTube and type in Jordan De Jong, where you'll find the Smashed Avo Property podcast being hosted on YouTube, and plenty of other content that I'm putting out consistently. If you're keen for more content like this, make sure you subscribe, and please leave us a review with any feedback for future podcasts. And until next time, happy house hunting.